Well, it looks like the Europoors are finally coming to terms with what we Americans have known at least since the Snowden revelations, and that is that the NSA knows no borders, it knows no bounds, and it will peer into the most intimate details of the lives of every single human being on this planet to the extent that they are able to. Danish state media, which is kind of an interesting source for this, is reporting that through collaboration with Danish intelligence, the NSA, the American National Security Agency, was able to warrantlessly wiretap and spy on the leaders of France, Germany, as well as, interestingly enough, the formerly United Kingdoms of Sweden and Norway. Now, I guess it is somewhat commendable that the NSA only chose to spy on government officials, and particularly the leaders of these governments, rather than the entire populations of these countries. At least that's according to this report. I guess it's possible that they also just wiretapped everybody and were only paying attention to. Well, I guess they did, because they were, the way that this was done is they tapped into the backbone of the internet, which apparently Denmark is the crossroads for a lot of the internet, coming from both the Nordic countries up the north side of the North Sea, as well as the UK, Germany, France. All of them, their communications flow through Denmark. And so the Danes gave the NSA access to this entire stream of information. So theoretically, the NSA could pull data from any individual that they wanted, through this connection, which was totally illegal, I'm sure, under Danish law, and almost certainly would have been illegal under EU law, I would think. But the irony here is that despite the fact that I think that the anger of Macron and Merkel is well placed, it is legitimate, it is understandable. The Europeans are still treated far better by the NSA than we petty little Americans are. Because over here in America, no matter who you are, the NSA is spying on you and listening to everything and reading all your texts. And hey, if they're going to spy on us, you would think that they would spy on the rest of the world. You would think that out of it, if this supposedly, the NSA is supposed to be about the security of the nation, the American people, that we would be the lowest level threat, on a scale of 1 to, I don't know, the People's Liberation Army. And so we Americans should be the last ones getting spied on if, the true mission of the NSA is to be believed, that they are supposed to, protect our national security, using in scare quotes there, of course. And so, yes, I agree with Merkel that allies, should not be spying on each other. That's true. But, hey, it's hard for me to have a ton of sympathy when, it's hard for me to be particularly outraged at the NSA spying on the leaders of the Europoors, when, again, as I keep saying, the NSA spies on its own people, on the people that's supposedly acting in the interest of to protect. And so Merkel and Macron should not be shocked by this. If they heard the Snowden leaks, which I assure you they did, they should not be shocked that they're being spied on as well. They should assume that, because the NSA is they consume a lot of water cooling all of their servers out in Utah, because they are just they've got a dragnet sweeping up as much data around the world as they can. They want data and data and data. Who knows? Maybe they're building some kind of really scary AI program, Skynet thing to run the world. It wouldn't surprise me, frankly, because the NSA, not a bunch of great guys. Now, the other thing that was interesting about this story was that I remember there being a very similar story a few years ago when Obama was president, and lo and behold, this story today is referring to spying that went on apparently in 2013 and 2014, and that actually lines up with the dates of that old story that I remembered, when Obama was caught spying on Merkel, and it was a big deal at the time. So again, even more reason for why are the Europeans shocked by this? You already knew this. This already came out a long time ago. This is kind of old news. I mean, the new thing here is the fact that you had, I guess, a bunch of Kislings in Denmark helping out the Americans. So, as far as, them talking about, oh, I mean, we demand answers from the Americans. This is unacceptable. It's like, well, I mean, I'm sure you demanded answers back in 2013. And, Obama thumbed his nose at you, as they would say, over across the pond. I believe people still say that, right? Or no, I guess it's he bit his thumb at them, right? Isn't that what they say? Of course, that's a British saying, but, I don't know any European English language phrases that would be appropriate here. And I don't recall Obama showing any remorse back then or telling the NSA to stop. Apparently he didn't tell them to stop because, according to this leak, it went on into 2014, and the original story, was from 2013. And what reason do we have to believe that this ended in 2014? I mean, I guess this particular story only chronicles the events of 2013 and 2014, but there's no reason to believe that, unless, Denmark put the kibosh on this in 2014, there's no reason to believe why the NSA wouldn't have continued. The NSA is going to try and spy on everybody that they can. No one is safe. Everyone is a potential national security threat because at any moment you might think a thought that goes against the narrative of what they call the interagency. Who is the interagency, you ask? It's nobody who was elected by anyone. It's nobody who was even appointed by anyone who was elected. The interagency is apparently just a term that they use to refer to all of these different spooks, the so-called intelligence community. And they get together in their, in their little monthly meetings, and they say, okay, here's what the weather's going to be, and here's what's for lunch on Fridays, and here's what the official narrative is for, all global politics. The interagency fancies itself an impromptu Politburo. We saw this again while Trump was president. One of the things that I can't remember the name of this guy. He was a lieutenant colonel, I think. He was one of the the anti-Trump whistleblowers who was coming out to Mueller and saying, "Oh my gosh, Trump is Putin's puppet." And when he went before Congress, and the Democrats had him testifying because, oh my gosh, we have this brave whistleblower, this lieutenant colonel. I don't know why I'm forgetting his name at this point, but you probably know who I'm talking about. I think he had a Slavic name, maybe even. They brought him forward, and they said, "Okay, Colonel, what is it that Trump has done that has shown you that he is Putin's puppet? Was he listening to Katyusha on his record player? Was he drinking copious amounts of vodka? Was he growing out a mustache like Joseph Stalin?" And the answer was none of those things. This lieutenant colonel, this damning testimony that he gave condemning Trump said that Trump merely sought to further policy that went against the interests of the interagency. And this guy seriously said this, and he was very blatant about it. He did not. He didn't hold back. As far as he was concerned, Trump's crime was disrespecting, or rather disregarding, the will of the interagency, because everyone knows that the President of the United States, even he, is subject to the interagency's whims. And the same is true if you're in Europe, even more so. If they won't even submit to the whims of the elected American president, you think they're going to give a damn about the president of France or the chancellor of Germany? They see you as nothing but peons. You're all pawns in their little game. If you are, the leader of Germany, you think you have any right to privacy? You think that you are beyond the clutches of the interagency? Wrong. If you cross them, they will see to it that you lose your job, and that, somebody who is more, let's say, agreeable is put in your place. This is what we have seen around the world for a long time. This is how the U.S. operates. The U.S. doesn't, invade a country and raise its flag and colonize it and, declare, after World War II, we didn't go to Germany and say, okay, this is the colony of American Germany. No, we didn't do that. All we did was we took over Germany, and we made sure that whoever was in charge of Germany was an ally of ours and was a friend of ours. And if somebody wasn't, friendly to the United States, then they had no chance of ruling Germany. And so the U.S., does not directly administer, its overseas empire. It just makes itself the kingmaker and treats the leaders of these other countries as, provincial governors. In a sense. And, frankly, I think that, actual state governors here in the United States probably have more latitude to oppose Washington than, the leaders around the world do, because it's much harder for the CIA to stage a violent coup against, someone in the United States. Some would argue that cases like this have happened in our history. The assassination of Huey P. Long comes to mind. Of course, that was before the creation of what we today call the CIA. I believe OSS did not exist until World War II, and I think Long was killed in the 30s. But there were plenty of predecessors. I mean, the origins of what today we call the interagency or the intelligence community really goes back, I think, I would say, people talk about spy rings during the Revolutionary War, but I think that the modern intelligence community really started in the 1890s with, the bombing of the USS Maine and Navy intelligence and all that. Navy intelligence is really the oldest spy agency here in the U.S. The NSA, of course, which has been thinking of the wrong intelligence agencies here, which has been spying on Europe here, and that we're talking about today, was created in the 1930s by, the great paraplegic Franklin Roosevelt. And so it actually predates the current regimes ruling over France and Germany. Because I believe we're in the Fifth French Republic. It only began in the 1950s, and the current Federal Republic of Germany was created by the United States in 1949, I believe. And so, the NSA just in so many ways outclasses these entire regimes. And so I think the problem is that Merkel and Macron ever expected to be treated fairly by the U.S. to begin with, and to be treated as equals. You are not allies. You are pawns. That's how you are viewed by these people in Washington. And so if you want to be treated as anything but that, you need to stand up for yourself and, show some defiance and, dare them to try and do what they did to what's his name in Ukraine during the Maidan. Viktor Yanukovych, that was it. I had to look it up. I couldn't. There's too many guys who have been in and out of leaving Ukraine. But anyway, it's one thing to do that to Viktor Yanukovych, somebody who in the United States, never heard of, and it was in a far-off country that, none of us have ever been to. But I mean, Germany, that's a normal, civilized country. Germans, they're basically white people. Whereas, in American parlance, Slavs haven't really achieved what would be considered whiteness so far, and I don't want to get into sort of American, domestic American political ideas, but my point is to say that it would be much more shocking for the American people to witness, the CIA try and stage a coup in a place like Germany or France than it would a place like Ukraine or Yugoslavia. And so I think that should incentivize the powers that be in Europe, the people who fancy themselves leaders of not just their own domestic nations, but real European leaders, to stand up for themselves And not be puppets. And again, I'm no fan of Merkel and Macron. I don't like them. I would never vote for either of them. I think that they're terrible. I hate the entire European Union. I would be out there with Nigel Farage trying to agitate to break up that stupid political entity that was sold as a free trade agreement, as ridiculous as that sounds. Shows you the dangers, actually, of so-called free trade agreements, which, contrast that with just actual free trade policies. You don't need to have an agreement to have free trade. You just say, hey, we're going to trade freely now. And you don't need to have treaties that, that create sort of obligations for your government, with another country. I'm not a fan of things like that, of creating, global governance and international law. But anyway, my point is that if the Europeans want to do that, they should at least do it with dignity and not just, continue to be the little puppets of the U.S. I mean, I know that is one of the main goals of the European project, is to try and create, a bloc in Europe that really can sort of be an equal to the United States. I think that that's a fantasy and that it will never happen. The European Union will never equal the power of the United States. But if that is their goal, they need to stand up for themselves and start differentiating themselves and making it clear that we are no longer, a colonized people. So with that said, I think I will end it there for today.